the meeting to order. Let's see, 5:30. Do we have a quorum yet?
You need Bob back on to get your quorum because you have 7 members and you only got 3 on right now.
So we lost Bill and Bob?
I think they're just logging out and logging back in.
Okay, got it.
Oh, there's Tina.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
That sounds very ominous.
I'm back. We have a quorum. We're still waiting for Bill and Bob to return. We have a quorum now, though. Hope everyone enjoyed the big snowstorm last week. Put it down in your memory books. That's what snow looks like. Do we have a time limit on how long we have to wait for?
You're the chair.
I assume they can call in on their phones if they had to. Let me text them.
How many constitute a quorum?
4. So we good got him
We're good to go.
I think so. I mean, they were on the call before, so let me just text them. If not, I'll just text them and then I'll say we'll get started. Okay, I guess at 5, it's 5:35? Call the meeting to order, and I'm sure they'll join us if there's any significant votes or input from Bill. Yeah, Bob's coming back solo here. He's still muted. Well, I'll get started. Public comment, Raquel, any public with us?
We do have Katie, but she doesn't have her hands raised at this time.
Okay, so Katie, raise your hand if you want to come in, but I assume we have a public comment later. Moving on to item number 3, approval of minutes from February 21st, 2023. Would anyone,
I'll make a motion to approve those.
okay? Do we have any comment and discussion? Do we have a second? Tina seconds it. All in favor? Aye, unanimous. Number 4, architects update. Justin, you want to?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Just a brief update. We have been working with members of the town with some of the more technical requirements for food service equipment, storage areas. We had a good meeting with Becky this afternoon to make sure that we were landing on the instructional storage areas. We're working with Bill on custodial storage space, and we are simultaneously updating the documents with our consultants. We should be able, by our next building committee meeting, to have a good graphic package to kind of share the colored floor plans, some images, etc. We do have a meeting with the selectmen next Tuesday, which we will provide an update of the site plan and the overall floor plan to them. The 2 big things that we have been coordinating is the request for additional parking on the site. We are up to 224 parking spaces on the site plan. So we're working on validating the parent pickup and drop off location before the moment we need to be meeting the staff and visitor requirements for at least the southern portion of the site. Couple of schedule related items. The wetland submission is in. They will receive the application at their next meeting. There is a site walk scheduled for March 18th, and then the meeting itself will be April 3rd. We are also scheduling the advisory committee on community appearance for April 11th will be the date that we are in front of them. Beyond that, I'm sure Adam will bring up some of the other items that we've been working on. But that is the kind of one line of where we are in the schedule and what we have been working on. Are there any questions or?
Still on schedule for the ED package in a couple
Yeah,
weeks? Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. I think that's great. Next item, Adam's update.
Good evening, everyone. Just as a high-level update, I'm going to share the calendar schedule that I included in your packets. As Justin alluded to, a lot of the focus over the next couple weeks is dedicated to getting some of these submissions in, whether it be the inland wetlands, which was just submitted, or some of the intake items for Planning and Zoning Commission and the applications in that regard, to start working through those processes, getting public hearings scheduled, all that fun stuff. And as part of that, there's a lot of deeper dives into some of these, call it site programmatic components and building programmatic components as we evolve from schematic design into design development, and you start thinking of not just where things are in the building, but okay, how is this space going to be used? That influences how some of the walls might be shaped, or how the parking lot might be designed, how traffic flow for the parents drop off. Does it go one way? Does it go the other way? Angle orientation of stalls, that kind of thing, to really deep dive into making sure that the end result aligns with what's needed, not just from the ed specs, but also from neighbor feedback, from staff feedback, authorities feedback, that kind of thing. So a lot of what you see on the schedule is some of these intake meetings. What you don't see are the 18,000 sub meetings, half-hour Zoom calls, screen shares, that kind of thing that gets sprinkled in here when we're meeting in real time with, whether it be Becky Frost, the principal, or the civil engineer, or Bill, or whomever, to work through these iterations more quickly. As Justin alluded to, also we got the Board of Selectmen update next week. The big milestone you see here is design development documents coming forth on the 21st of March. So that'll start the process of not just a more formal design review of actual plans on the plan sets and specifications and things, but also leading us into our estimate. And we've got the estimate reconciliation meeting targeted or scheduled rather for April 14th. So at the end of the day on the 14th is when we'll have the sense of where some of the numbers align. And then that week thereafter, we'll get the reconciled estimate to see where we've trended since schematic design. Some other documents and deliverables. We'll have start to get the documentation ready for the Office of State Grants. There's a lot of just paperwork that goes into the next few design reviews. So that's something that Justin and I and the town will be working on to get those identified, as well as some of the other requirements for high performance buildings. Got to get a request for proposal out for the hazmat evaluation, and then pushing on the what is likely to be the first sign off with the water and the septic system the next couple of weeks here. And to that point about RFPs, we do have the geothermal testing request for proposal that was on the street all last week. So that those responses are coming in on Monday next week. That's sort of the view of what the next month or two is going to look like. In terms of decisions, not a lot of decisions for this group. And then, as I mentioned, the drawings will be coming out on the 21st of March. So after that, it'll be something to chew on more insofar as looking at the plans, looking at how they've evolved since design development, and getting that feedback to the design team before we ultimately jump into the dollars and cents portion of it. And as a kind of give you the flavor of how that's evolved since schematic design, Justin and his team reconfigured portions of the building. It was also as a result of the schematic design, value engineering, and value management effort, and shrunk portions of the building in alignment with the ed spec changes, as well as just made some of those functional changes to save on costs and make the building more efficient. And those are all good positives towards the budget side of things. But on the flip side, there were feedback from the neighbors and community members that inherently add things to the site. So where that lands in terms of pluses and minuses, we really won't know until we get through the DD estimate reconciliation process. But we did a good job at schematic design of getting through that. But there will be another effort to confirm that what's done actually aligns with the project budget and plan before we move on to the construction documents. So more to come. There's no action items right now in that regard, but just keep that in mind that there's still a ways through design we need to get through, and to ensure that we're on a responsible path forward. Anything on that before I get into some of the traffic study, which I talked to Graham about?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Did the land trust actually buy the river? Is that going through, so we only have to do a regular septic system?
Yes, that they voted by public, it was public meeting, and a vote was held, and there was 2 people present. So we didn't meet the quorum for 150, so it passed by statute. So yes, we're
There you
all
go.
set to, yep, putting in the land trust.
Good.
Bill and I were there.
Good,
Make
glad to hear
sure-
it.
So yeah, that was,
Yay, all right. I just
Yeah.
hadn't heard the final on it.
yeah, it just happened last week, so
Okay,
all good.
good.
And any other questions for Adam on the? Oh, one thing I noticed on the schedule, we have the building committee meeting the same night as the probable hearing for the wetlands. So we may, if we don't have anything hot on the agenda, we may want to either reschedule that or cancel that building committee meeting. And just depending on what, what's happening with the wetlands, I assume it's mostly the civil engineer, but it probably makes sense to have some representation at the meeting. So just.
I'll take a look at that and we'll reschedule or as needed if needed, or just cancel.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're kind of, sounds like we're probably in between major issues, unless there's an invoice or two that needs to be paid for Colliers or something like that. We'll reschedule for Tuesday. God forbid that happens. So I have to move that forward. Got it. And you were starting to talk about, it sounds like we met with the neighbors. One of the big issues is the concern about some of the traffic backing up and, and the possible impact of the intersection where the parent drops. So I think it makes sense to do a little more of a deeper dive into that, just to make sure, so that when people at the planning and zoning meetings, they're not questioning that. Better to be prepared than, surprised. So I think Adam has solicited a proposal from a traffic consultant to kind of do a little more in-depth analysis of the parent drop, which is always a very gray area based on it's very localized and, weather related and things like that. So it's not your typical traffic engineering thing we're probably talking about doing. So with that lead up, Adam, if you would,
Yes. So
Regarding traffic, though, I'd like to point out that the intersection of Route 1 and Mungertown is bad now, and it's going to get worse when our school goes in. And I know that's a state highway, but we might want to look at some sort of traffic light or blinking sign there. That's close to where I live, and that's an intersection that's pretty bad already, and it's going to get worse. So it's something we might want to consider looking into. All right, sorry, go ahead.
No problem. So that's all good data. And so that one, I know it's on the general radar of things to observe, but to Graham's point, we had a meeting with one with the neighbors, and then we had another separate design team meeting with Benish, the civil engineer, and then looking again at the traffic study that was done before the design process started in earnest. And there was some conflicting information between what the traffic study suggested about some of the intersections, namely Green Hill and Mungertown Road, and versus what the neighbors were indicating just anecdotally about some of the traffic patterns there. And then also the specificity of how many parents get dropped off. The original traffic study did look at it, but it wasn't extensively looked at or commented on necessarily in relation to all the other things that traffic study was looking at. So what I subsequently included in your packet, and I'll share my screen here, was this just came through this morning, was a quote from Benish, who's the civil engineer on the project, working through Tecton, to do just that, a deeper dive into the parent drop-off counts, as well as that intersection on Mungertown and Green Hill Road, in response to those two data points where, as Graham mentioned, we want to have a concrete sense of what's going on there. So two different studies are looking at the same individual areas, and the design decisions are being based upon those, because there's been some additional concern about that area. And ultimately, the parent drop-off is a hot topic right now for the site development, as we're looking through that northern parking lot, if you recall, on the site plan. That's where the parent drop-off is, and how many spots, but whether it be parked parents or dropping off parents, what does that actually need to be able to support? So that way we don't end up with a string of parents out on Mungertown Road and backing up to Green Hill Road. But at the same time, we do have a limited site. Everything costs money, so you don't want to design for 200 and only 25 come, and vice versa. So if the committee is so inclined to entertain this, I did put this in the packets, and I put a draft motion in the packets to authorize the scope for 4,800 to proceed with the work, so we can get that data moving.
would anyone like to volunteer to make a motion?
Do we have the money for it? Do we have like a slush fund money for subsequent studies?
Yes. There might be additional funds in the traffic budget. If not, there's owner's contingency for this, but this is a pretty important data set that we should be looking at.
Okay.
I'll make a motion because I also think it's important to look at because there's been changes with COVID to parent drop off and pick up that, wouldn't have been known when this was originally done. So I think it's important for that reason alone. I know there's a lot more people that are not taking the bus.
Exactly. So that's, yeah. And I think if we're gonna have one issue with planning and zoning, this will be the issue that people want to talk about, and everybody's an expert in traffic, as we all know. It's because everyone drives in traffic. So it's good to have as much documentation as possible. So we have a motion. Would anyone like to make a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous? Beautiful. Thanks, Adam. Anything else on your end before I loop on to Nick, which I flipped the order. Sorry, Nick, but you all set, Adam?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, Nick, I jumped over you. I put you on the agenda and I skipped. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Adam had a lot more to say than I do. With the impending issuance of the DD documents, that's when we will start to coordinate in the BIM model the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing system, as well as the structural, something that we, prior to maybe the last couple of years, we strictly did during construction as part of the MEP coordination process. We found it beneficial, certainly since supply chain issues, but even before that, to try and coordinate as much of the bigger hits, if you will, during the design phase and as we approach receipt of the bid documents. It just makes the process for coordinating during construction that much quicker. And what it means to you all is that we're able to release materials and equipment sooner. We don't release a lot of our equipment until coordination process is far along and during the construction phase. So if we can shorten that by doing some of it during the design phase, it certainly benefits the project. So once we get the DDs, we have a virtual design and construction team that will work on that. We've had a kickoff meeting with them a month or so back with our team and Justin's team. So that's the big item on the horizon for us. Aside from that, we have a number of projects throughout the state right now. I would say more on the western half of the state that are either bidding now or will be bidding in the next few weeks. And as good as we think we are at estimating, the proof is on bid day. That's what we measure against. So it'll be a great test to see if our estimating team is estimating too high or is too low. And it gives us a kind of a benchmark, so to speak. So a lot of the same materials that are in this building are in some of our other buildings, even if they happen to be healthcare or otherwise. So understanding those costs based on receipt of bids for multiple projects is certainly a good thing. And I don't know if I have an update at the next meeting, but certainly after that, just kind of a gut check, if you will, and I'll certainly circulate that information to Adam and Justin's team as well. But other than that, that's all I have for tonight.
Are you still thinking we just do an early release rather than an early package on some of the switchgear stuff like that? Is that still what you're thinking? Are you still?
I would say 6 weeks to 2 months ago, I would have said we're probably okay. But we're experiencing a real problem right now on another school project for switchgear that we released 13 months ago. It's going to show up 14 months after release. So we did not see that coming. But as we look across a lot of our jobs, not just in New England, but other projects that have similar switchgear setups, similar transfer switch setups with generators, et cetera, we're starting to see those lead times really creep up. And it's not so much for the bulk of the switchgear. It's one or two parts and pieces here or there. It's an exotic type of breaker or a transfer switch or something like that that prevents the unit from being completely manufactured, whether it's in America or otherwise, and shipped here. So yeah, switchgear is one. We don't have rooftop units, thankfully, but some of the heat pumps and some of the other components that we're tracking those as well to see if it makes sense to do an early buy on those. And we should probably start talking about that in the next month, probably, what our strategy will be for that, whether it's direct buy by the town, whether it's direct buy from Gilbane, out to the manufacturers, or if it's engaging a contractor, putting out an early bid package, if you will, just to furnish, say, switchgear or just heat pumps, et cetera. A few different ways to do it. They all have pluses and minuses to them, but like I said, we should probably start having those conversations in the next month or so.
Got it. Okay. Are you still thinking about the early detailing of the steel? I think you mentioned that was a possibility.
Yeah, we've done it on 2 other projects that probably about 6 months and 9 months ago. It worked out fairly well. It certainly saved some time after award in terms of getting steel on site. We've started to build out the construction schedule on our side in-house, and based on the information that we have, obviously the design is certainly going to change and details will get refined, but we start to build out our schedule, and right now I don't know that steel procurement is necessarily an issue, just based on the size of the site, the amount of foundations, the grade change along site will make the foundation duration last a little bit longer. Some things like that, where if it was, if this was just a square box, in the middle of a flat field, then I would say, yeah, we'll be ready for steel sooner, and it would behoove us to buy it sooner. In this situation right now, it doesn't look like that's something we'll have to do, but we'll certainly evaluate that as we get the DD set and start to get more details from the design team.
Got it. Thanks, Nick. Any questions for Nick? while he's here? Great, thanks, Nick. Next item, public comment. Anyone hand raised? Anyone?
No, no comments.
Number 8, remarks. Any other comments, remarks, questions, anything? Great. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll do it. Seem to do it every week. We'll stay consistent.
Aaron, we have a second? We have Bob? All in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Good luck to the UConn ladies tonight for their championship.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.